Hello, and welcome to the Craft and Calling podcast. I am so thrilled that you are joining us today. My name is Christine Marie, and I am so honored to be joined here by Adam Swauger. Adam, thank you for joining us today. You're the co-founder of Reconstruct Consulting Group. I actually just spoke with your co-founder Mateo a couple weeks ago, and we had a wonderful conversation. And I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. When we were just getting started, you brought up the fact that if I had one thing that I could convey to folks, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But the one thing that you have to give is actually a core part of what constitutes being a leader that I don't think anyone I know of that I've listened to on podcasts talks about. And yet you're working so closely with businesses and bringing clarity to the chaos and also working with leaders to really help them gain the mindset and almost like the inner being in order so that the external outer doing is a reflection of the direction that they want to go. And so you're really working with folks on the inner level to then ensure that their business is a reflection of that. And this piece that you said that is missing, frankly, in so many conversations. I'm just really honored that you would be willing to join us today and talk about that. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm really glad to be here talking with you.
I'm so excited for this conversation, Adam. I would love to just give a little bit of context. We're going to be talking about what does it take to really be a leader that it's like the leader of leaders. You're actually leading leaders. And so we get this window into your experience, both working with many leaders, but then also your own story and your own transformation. Um, and that thing that is necessary to really help leaders get to that next level. Before we get to that point, can you tell us a little bit about you and your own transformation that's positioning you today to help the men that you're helping?
Yeah, something that comes to mind when I think about introducing myself is I've sat in rooms and introduced myself as, "Hi, my name is Adam, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, my name is Adam, and I'm an addict. Hi, my name is," fill in
Mm,
the blank. I've introduced myself to a lot of groups of people as a patient in psych wards, where connection has been made with people through how I identify in a moment. And
mm,
that's looked different through all the years of my life and all the experiences I've had. I think ultimately, if I were to say, like, "Hi, my name is Adam," now I would probably, if I had to sum it up, and my identity now would be, I'm a child of God. And that
mm.
has looked all kinds of ways in my life, and a truth that I've been anchored to at times and I've drifted far away from at times. Um,
Yeah.
but you alluded to kind of a message if I had one thing to impart, and it would be summed up with this study that I heard about. I don't know when I heard about this, maybe 10, 15 years ago. But a study that was done in the 50s. I think the scientist was Richter. I think his last name was Richter. But he did this study with rats, and he was one by one dropping rats into these little glass cylinders of water, and they had no way to get out. They couldn't claw their way out, and basically let them drown. And the study was to see how long they could tread water, how long they could survive before they just gave up and drowned. And there
Mm.
were a few purposes that they were testing this, but one of the things they didn't really expect to find was that at one point they decided to, right before the point when a rat would give up and drowned, which was about 15 minutes on average, they decided to pull a rat out, let it dry off, let it recover, catch its breath, and then drop it back in and see how long it would last. And the average,
Interesting.
once they did that, the average of those rats that were put back in after they were saved and put back in the water was 60 hours, which is like
Oh my word. I
super
have chills
dramatic.
all over my body. So it was
Yeah.
15 minutes and then 60 hours.
Yeah. When I heard that first, this was before
Wow.
ChatGPT or before I was
Yeah.
really proficient with Google. I remember trying to find that study and I couldn't find it. And I thought it was mice and I thought it happened in the 30s. Like the pieces, I don't remember information verbatim well at all. Like I can't quote scripture very well. I can't quote lines for movies very well, but I get the sentiment of it. Like I get what it means to
Right.
me. And so
Right.
with that study, it meant something. And I was kind of disheartened after I'd shared that with a lot of people, and a lot of contexts where there was just hopeless situations. And When I couldn't find it, I'm like, I don't know how true that is.
Right.
And then I was finally, through the help of ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever I used recently, to just verify, and I found that information, and it hit me. I got the chills all over again of just this message of what is it that allows that type of physical, mental, like it doesn't seem possible, and it's hope.
Mhm.
Like that's how I
Mhm.
interpret as what's happening there. That resiliency comes from a place of hope. If you've
Mm.
been set free from a situation or you've experienced that, and it kind of makes me think of, and just put your hand up or stop me if I like ramble on too long.
Promise.
um, Going through kind of a series of reflections on that, and how I can um, interpret that and use that in my life in ways that may not be really evident, that's the way, like that's the way to break through some barriers in certain situations,
Mm.
and relationships and business, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, is to have that hope anchored. And I think a
Mm.
big part of that, and with there are so many great coaches, consultants, a lot of platforms in the construction space where you can get guidance, mentorship, community, and this hope is kind of baked right in, whether someone acknowledges it or not. If
Right.
you can look at someone on social media and recognize, like, man, this business owner is living a life that I want to have. They're killing it.
Yeah.
Like they've got the systems, they've got all the things, and I have hope from that. And that changes everything for me. And a big part of that is being able to recognize that that exists somewhere externally, somewhere outside of myself, and to
Right.
attach to the belief that that can be true for me too.
Mm.
So, a way that I've got 4 kids, and my second to oldest daughter is really into volleyball right now. And I mentioned before we got on, all my kids are out of the house right now, which is a really weird thing. But normally I'll be on a Zoom call with a client or something, and I'm hearing a volleyball in the background bouncing against the wall. She's just practicing her bumps and everything, like constantly. So we got her a little rebound net for the basement for Christmas, so she can go down there and practice up against the big
Nice.
rebound net. So I was down there this weekend with my girls, and we were just seeing how long we could go. Like, how many hits could we get without dropping the ball? And we were going one at a time. And I didn't intend to make this an experiment or anything, but it was this phenomenon where each time that record was broken, then it raised the ceiling to what's possible.
Yeah.
And as we're doing that with the girls, it went from like 10 to, then my younger daughter got 12, and then it was 15. And it's this focus on, okay, I want to hit this mark that's higher than what I've seen as possible, but still it's a fixation on what you've seen as possible. So there's a ceiling there. And I got to a point with doing that with my girls. I was like, we're focused on getting like a little bit better than what we've seen shown for us. And I don't know what all the record times are for racing. I don't follow the Olympics or racing, but I have heard that phenomenon in racing where it's like the 6 minute mile was a big deal.
Mm.
Someone achieved that, and then all of a sudden, people all around the world, it's like breaking that 5 minute
Yeah.
mile, 4 minute mile. It's like, what happens when someone displays like, this is what's possible? And
Mm.
it's hope, and it's the ability to push beyond what someone could on their own because they've seen that. So I'm going through with my
Mm.
girls. I explain that, and I'm also a big fan of the concept of flow and just operating in flow, in whatever capacity we're able to in day to day life. So I went into my little session. I think I got up to like 42 or something, and I'm bumping it against the thing. My next one, I'm 95. I remember thinking like,
Wow.
I want to double it if I can do 42, and I did
Right.
double it. And then my other girls went, and then I was up again, and I'm like, I'm not going to think about the number. I'm just going to go. I have no idea what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna get in the I'm just gonna do the thing. And I got 294,
Oh my
264, something
gosh.
like that. It was upwards of 250. And it
Wow.
just blew out of the water. So all of that to say, like, we're going to find what we're looking for. I've suffered from depression a lot of my adult life. I have bipolar disorder. Been in a lot of situations where I have not felt hope. I've not sought hope. I've been desperate, depleted, discouraged, defeated. And when when I get a glimpse of something that can draw my eye and vision to hope, like I will find it there. And I'm at a point in my life where I've looked forward to my 40s. I turned 40 in March. And like when I'm in my 40s, I'm going to have experienced enough and learned enough that I actually have something to contribute to the world. Like my 40s are going to
Yes.
be about contribution. I'm not quite there yet, but this pursuit of looking for things that are going to develop me to be the person who has something meaningful to contribute to the world. And
Mm,
in that, I've been able to recognize in that pursuit amazing mentors, amazing resources, amazing people in the world that are doing things that have lifted my the ceiling of what I think is possible for me, but more importantly, for the people around me or within the reaches of my influence.
mm.
So hope.
Wow. Hope, the best of things. Man, Adam, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, even just the way you opened it, it was so honest. And it's easy, I think, for a lot of us to hide what thing frankly we would constitute perhaps as skeletons in the closet rather than recognizing they're a part of our story, and frankly would we even be the same person without them? It's a total reframe on the experiences that have gotten us to where we are today that frankly a lot of folks probably need to know and hear. Because if we're on the other side, or even if we're not done, even if we're just in the process and in the pursuit of it, I think hope comes from this is interesting. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Raising the ceiling by way of our own, what can I do? How can I beat my own record, my own time? Okay, look also. So the second way that hope comes is through looking at other people, how they've raised the ceiling. And then perhaps even a third way is look at them just in the pursuit of something
Mm,
different, something better. It's like the
yeah.
process, because it's so easy. Frankly, I'm guilty of this. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs is I'm guilty of wanting just to get to the destination, wanting just to get to the outcome, rather than honoring the process and the cultivation of ourselves as we get from point A to point B. And so I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that in between process.
Yeah, I think there are all kinds of inspirational posters that have cliche quotes around a lot of this idea. That's probably
Mm,
developed a lot from maybe the 80s and 90s until like the 2000s, where it's less about being on top of the mountain with the flag in the CEO's office and more about that climb and that journey. And we think a lot with the work that Mateo and I do, and as we've helped develop each other, and like what this looks like to grow is sprints and periods of we're getting to the next base camp and the next level of stability. And there is an element of arriving or achieving or something in that process, because we all know there's none of that sensation of fulfillment or achievement um, in a complete form ever. Like
yeah.
the highest achievers know that, I'm sure, more than anyone, which I would not consider myself in that category at this point in my life as the one of the highest achievers. But in my reality, and anyone that I've known, that the people who have experienced the most peace at any point in their life have attached their fulfillment or the pursuit of their purpose to their calling. Is another big theme of life. It just happens to be a big part of your podcast and the title and what
Right.
I've heard with your guests. But the pursuit of a calling
Mm,
unlocks something within us that um, any level of achievement or quote unquote success by what the world standard may be will never touch. It's the pursuit of that call. It's the next step towards that. It's not a contentment with where things are in the process from a standpoint of complacency, but a contentment in knowing that in pursuit of whatever that higher vision is, there's impact and um, purpose that is having influence within that process. And I think the people that I've come to know or looked up to or admired who've had the greatest level of, I use air quotes way too much, success,
Yeah.
and what they would define as success has to do with the people and lives that they've positively impacted.
Mm, right.
And you can achieve all these things and not experience that in your life and like completely missed out.
Mm. And I'm so grateful that you brought that up because honestly, it's so easy, especially when we've got a craft that is all consuming. And for many of folks at different levels of the business, but usually under, kind of under 3 million, you're man, you're in the business and it's taking up pretty much every part of you.
Yeah.
And so when we think about what it takes to be a good leader and kind of get to that next level, raising your own ceiling, for us to kind of have that hope. I just love that example because, frankly, when I think of hope, I think of it not necessarily in any kind of business context. I usually think of hope pretty much just in a spiritual context. But what you're talking about when it comes to hope is both and. It's seeing and being reminded of what's possible that somebody could take their business with only 15 employees and by the end of the year be at 150. It's seeing that it's possible. And man, am I even dreaming big enough? Right now, on the back of my phone is this quote by Michelangelo. The greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high, and that we miss it, but instead that it is too low and we reach it. So
Mm,
actually it's far more damaging to be shooting like so low and then really arrive and then be like, oh, I could have maybe done way more. And so if we're not constantly in a state of, and this is where I'm wondering, this is kind of my question for you, is it being in community, is it being around others, is it reading books, like how do we actually ensure that our ceiling is perpetually being raised so that we're aiming high and never actually self-limiting?
wow. Yeah, that's a really powerful question. And I think there's a lot of really key foundational parts of like living a fulfilling life that would
Mm,
fall underneath that. Um, it's kind of the idea of, we just had Christmas. I don't know when this is going to drop, but it's the week after Christmas right now. And it's more blessed to give than to receive, like that kind of thing. And anybody who has given generously has experienced that and knows that to be true. And I think that's one of the most fulfilling things in my life. I'm selfishly bringing a lot of things back to my life and my experience. I mean, I'm the one talking and sharing, but also
right.
that's the only reality that I know personally. And to help someone else or be a part of, a lot of times, um, all right. So there's this book that my wife got me for Christmas. I'm a big fan of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. If
I've
you've
never
never
read
read
that.
that book, you absolutely should read it. And this is a
I'm writing
follow
it
up to
down.
it. But there's a page, and my wife read this book last night, and I was like, "Hey, there's a page in there that speaks so deeply to me. See
Mm,
if you can figure out what page it is when you get to it." And the pages only have like a sentence or two or a phrase. This beautifully, I could give a narrative on what these books have meant to me and the artist and author. But this quote is often the best answer is just to listen. And in the context of the story, it means a lot more. But something that struck me there is um, I've experienced a lot of growth and benefit and healing through other people in my life in all different kinds of ways. But that most often has come at the darkest times of my life through someone who's willing and actually sits with me in it. It's not that they have some profound message to deliver or some coffee mug scripture or philosophical stoic quote or something that's going to help me get through it. It's when someone just sits, whether I have something I need to say or not, or I have no words, it's someone who will be with me in that. And that
mhm.
quote, like the answer is often to listen. And that's the greatest gift because I can get long-winded and I can talk myself in circles. Like I'm great at that. But the greatest contribution I've had in meaningful ways to people who have needed help the most at times when the only thing I could give was just to share space. If they had something to express, to listen. If they didn't, to not just fill the air,
Yeah.
to only improve
Right.
upon the silence in those moments. And so
Mm.
thinking about what that is to, and I'm so far off, like whatever the core question that was within what you asked. But for me, so much comes back to there's so much answer to so many struggles and internal questions within my life
Mhm. Mhm.
in giving of myself to others.
Mm.
So when you
Hmm.
talk about, you mentioned raising the ceiling, you know, and people around us that we can look to or within ourselves. And I think with that same sentiment of everything I just shared about giving myself to others is one of the hardest things to do is to give myself that to
Yes.
myself. And
Right.
it's so easy. I ran a small remodeling business through my 20s. So about 10 years, I ran a business through my ups and downs. I had crack addictions, um,
Mm.
mental health issues, hospitalizations, all kinds of things that had happened. Drug my wife and family through hell um,
Mm.
within that time frame of running a business. And it was so easy in those times to give myself so fully to whatever it was, to business, to growing the business.
Mm.
I got addicted to systems at one point. That was like my anti-crack.
Mm. Yeah.
Reading became my anti-crack at times. Like I absolutely loved smoking crack, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something that I don't think we can operate outside of our calling and pursuit of our calling without having something that's artificially satisfying or tricking us to feel satisfied um, outside of that calling. So that could look like a small business owner, big business owner, giving everything they have to their work, but they can't sit quietly for 5 minutes in a room by themselves.
Yeah.
There's got to be a podcast, or there's got to be music, or there's got to be Netflix, or and even some really great things that can occupy the space where
Right.
internally, no matter how great of mentors we have and how great of things, I know you're a fan of As a Man Thinketh, which I am a huge fan of that small text as well. And whatever good seeds we could be sowing in the garden of our minds and our souls, there's something that I think more than ever in this generation and this time in the world that, man, just a few minutes of silence with ourselves. And there's so
Yeah.
many apps now around mindfulness and meditation. Like there's a huge culture and subculture right now around all of that, which just goes to show how difficult it is for us naturally to find that space. Um, that I think it's people would say like we can't pour from an empty cup, if you've heard that term before. And I think
Right.
you can. I think you can give something meaningful and transformational to someone while lacking desperately things that your soul requires for you to be healthy.
Wow.
I believe that to be true, but I think it's impossible to leave, to me, what matters more than anything else of what I leave behind in this world is
Mm.
what I've developed within my children.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I can have the maximum uh, impact for them, for their development, for them to pursue their callings and live in the fullness of who they are as children of God, if I've not embraced that identity myself.
Yes.
Maybe a friend or someone that I go to church with, or a homeowner that I work with, maybe I can deliver something that's a great gift of hope and freedom and all of that to them. But I don't believe truly we can to the people that are connected to the core of our being without finding that place within ourselves.
Mm. I'm so grateful that you led with listening because to be honest, when you first started, I was thinking of having someone else listen to you. But you expanded from there, you know, it's us listening to others, and frankly, we learn a lot in that process, but also listening to ourselves. You know, you ended there, Adam, and that is so incredibly important. I just want to drive this point home because I have seen a radical change in me every time I move through the elimination of inputs. It's almost like an intentional practice to sit in quiet. It doesn't come naturally. It's actually more natural to reach for my phone than it is to not. And so I have to actually disrupt my patterns and ways of doing life in order to
Right.
kind of go to that inner place. And in that process of listening, man, to your point, there's so much for us, both in somebody else listening to us and allowing us to kind of talk it out. You shared though earlier while we were in the green room that you actually do really well writing. And so another way to listen is by writing down what you're hearing and just kind of allowing it to come forth. And so there's this biblical story of a woman who really wants a child, and she's praying and asking God, and nothing, to no avail. And finally, she's kind of reached her limit, and she actually goes to the temple. In the biblical text, there, this is the time where you had to kind of physically go and pursue.
Mm.
God's presence was contained in this building, and so she goes. And there's a verse that says she poured out her soul before the Lord, and then He answered. And it's almost this act of pouring out and getting everything out that's in there. And then we get to examine, oh, I didn't even know this was inside me. And therein may actually lie either the problem that was getting in the way. Maybe there was a mental block to us being able to surpass that to that next level. I know that there's a lot that comes from the mental block surrounding finances and actually being able to get to that next level financially because of how we were raised or what we witnessed happening in our childhood. So, what pours out of us could very well be the answer or could be the problem that we can then work through. And
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful for, you know, we're talking about how do we get to that next level? How do we raise the ceiling? Listening to ourselves, getting someone to listen to us and help us also kind of pick apart the pieces. So, man, brilliant answer. And I'm so grateful for that. And Adam, in terms of even just questions that people can ask themselves as they listen, you know, what's a process that someone can take themselves through? You know, I've got my own little process on a day-to-day basis, but what's a process that you encourage folks that you're working with or that you do yourself to listen?
So you had, I'm going to butcher his last name, but you had, is it Mike Abramowitz?
Yes, Abramowitz. Yeah.
Abramowitz. I absolutely loved everything that was a part of that dialogue you guys had. And I would say, to answer that question, like, go back and listen to what he said about those prompts. It's so simple and beautiful. What I would probably say after, I would say, go back and listen to that and follow that process, is that it's not one size fits all. And that's something that I've been a part of masterminds. I've been a part of a few like really, really powerful men's groups where we're intimately connected and we're going through these disciplines. Part of that is journaling in these different ways and accountability and goal setting, all of these things. And what I've come to realize for me personally, and people that I've been involved with who are on this journey of personal growth and development, business growth, and developing their culture and their leadership, is this idea that it's not, there are principles to it
Mm,
that are key, but the recipe can be a deterrent from
mm,
experiencing progress and really attaching to a meaningful personal discipline that could change your life. So an example is, if someone suggested to you, like, I'm a journaler, I've got like a, a lot of journaling, because for me, I struggle to think linearly with all the things that are really deep and meaningful and matter. Like, I really don't care about talking about shallow things, thinking about shallow things. Like, I don't care about the football games that were this weekend. Like, I don't care about those things. But the deeper stuff for me personally, just doing more of a stream of consciousness journaling session at times is really, really powerful in what I need. At times, journaling through prayers. At times, journaling through a very specific recipe for goal setting for a quarter. And it's all
mhm,
designed and intentional around like this pursuit. So there's probably 10 or 12 different types of that exercise of sitting quietly with myself and processing through my thoughts through writing, that
Mm,
for me, that I've learned through seasons, like, okay, which is
yeah.
proper. It's like a tool belt. And
Mm,
so what I struggled with maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago was I would encounter people and I'd have these things that I'm all excited about that have been really big things changing my life. So whether it's someone who's struggling with an addiction or they're trying to grow their business, and I'm a systems guy. Like I have an LLC called Systematic.
I
Like a
love
system addict.
it.
And so I have this, but you can't like force that. If you have a company that struggles to systemize things, to have SOPs, to build an org structure that makes sense, like you can't go in with what makes sense to you and just apply all these templates and this fill in the blank to set your goals and revenue targets and then plug in this tech stack. Like it just doesn't work. It's the same thing with someone who's looking to grow personally. And so the principle there, I think, is less about from. Yeah, let me a disclaimer I should have given at the beginning is I'm I don't know that much stuff, and the things that I do think that I know, I'm not that great at practicing like
Mm,
what it is. I'm trying. I'm
I appreciate the
experimenting.
transparency. I think that's all of us.
Yeah, so by no means, I was talking to my wife before she left, and I do not like the idea of having books behind me. Like when I do coaching calls or Zooms or anything like that, I really don't. But we've got construction going on around us, and I try to make a little spot in the hallway to like have a different backdrop. I'm like, I do not like when I see someone with books behind them. I feel like they know what they're talking about. I automatically like I don't. I respect this expert sense of what they're communicating. Like I'm perked up and listened. Um, and I don't, this is an identity thing that I struggle with. And identity is a really, really big thing that may kind of come up in this next leg of conversation. But so
Yeah.
for me personally, is whether it's journaling or business development, what I've experienced with success in business and with other companies and things like that is like, I'm not an expert in anything in any of this. And
Mm,
I've learned that most through realizing that a success somewhere doesn't necessarily mean success somewhere else, either with someone else or within another part of my being or another
mm,
part of my business or another idea. But the core fundamental principles of what's happening there, that's the part that I want to get to. So, like, what's happening in the exercise of journaling? I think absolutely anyone could benefit from the process of working through thoughts. Now, that might mean for someone, it's pen and paper. It might be typing things out on a computer. It might be in an app on your phone. It might be while you're driving, speaking things out in an audio message. It might be taking that
mhm.
transcription and plug it in a chat GPT and get the feedback. Like it could look all
Yeah.
different kinds of ways. So this is a big thing that I think is a driver for the work that we do is there's a component of empathy that I believe is necessary for any real impactful transformative change through connection with another person
Mm,
or within ourselves.
mhm.
So let me explain that a little bit because I don't know exactly what I mean
I
yet.
love the mental processing. I love it. Go.
So empathy is huge. And I think now, still being young and dumb, the people I respect the most are really like in their 70s or 80s. And I think they have something truly worth listening to at a core fundamental level. And so I'm realizing that I don't know. I'm just able to point to some indicators for me. And so empathy is one of these things that without empathy, I can't properly suggest to someone or connect with someone in a way that's going to have real impact or induce real change in their life. And empathy is something that is core, so core to my being. Um, that I don't think I had any other option through the psych wards and a lot of time in crack houses and a lot of the people in situations that like I'm curious. So I'm asking people about their life. The the types of people that I've heard their stories. I came to realize I was 22 the first time I remember having a conversation with a homeless man that by the end of his story, I realized, and I've said this to my kids, I've shared this, anybody who knows me has heard a version of me, this moment of realization for me in that moment, that if I were this man, if I were this person born where he was born, to the family he was born to, and the situation he was born into, and the house and the neighborhood, went to the school, worked the job, had the marriage, had the divorce, had the kid who killed himself, had
Yes.
all of these things that happened in that
Wow.
very moment that I'm here with this man presently. If that was my story, I would be him. I would
Mm,
be looking the way he looked. I would be looking at the world the way he's looking at the world. I would have the feelings that he has, the thoughts, be taking the actions that he's taken in his life. Like in that moment, I lose the ability to judge anyone that I would ever come in contact with that's a human being in my entire life on the face of this earth. Because with that awareness, how could I judge someone? And I can struggle with this. It doesn't naturally snap into like I see someone doing some crazy thing or someone breaks into my car and I'm like, man, I feel the emotion of that thing. But if you get to know someone's story, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. And you're never going to know someone's entire story, and you're never going to be able to replay your whole entire
right.
story to yourself to the point that you have total understanding of what the hell's even happened in your life. That at any
Right.
point you feel like things are just deconstructing. But if you exercise a degree of empathy, which I'm tying this around to this journaling piece, is a way of understanding yourself and your story. There's a part of reflection that's necessary for someone to have the empathy for themselves,
Mm,
to be able to not judge themselves, in a way to be able to live in true identity.
mm,
Because otherwise, we are to ourselves filling in all the blanks of what we want to be
mm.
without recognizing the delta between where we are right now and where that is. So,
Wow.
the empathy piece as it relates to anyone else is if I know enough about someone's story to understand the way they think, their psychology, like what would really work for them, that's a part of the coaching that we do is we really need to get into not just understanding the P&L and the balance sheet and seeing
Right.
someone's tech stack and getting their org chart filled out and like what's your sales process, like all those things are really important. That's a big part of the identity of like what is this company right now, the
Mhm.
culture of the company, the mission, the values, like all the EOS stuff is like really core and important to understand the identity of the company. What does that look like for the person running the company, for the leadership team, for all the way down to the grunt guy, the runner who's running around? Like ultimately, there's a degree of empathy that I think for any real impact, this only matters for a company or an organization that wants to have a positive impact in the world. Because you can grow and scale an amazing, successful company and sell it to PE or leave it to your kids or anything like that and miss this whole piece. Like it's not
Mm.
necessary for success in business or success in a sports team or whatever. But my experience has been, and like I have sought counsel from a lot of mentors that are like the authors of the books that I've read over the years. Um, People in my life that I've been able to look at and see, at least for me personally, the life that I want to live is not the bottom line or the top line or like any of the lines in revenue or profit or anything like that. Those things are an amazing vehicle and give the ability to do things that matter. Like a business is a thing to steward. It's not a thing to hold identity in.
Right.
And so
Wow.
this empathy piece for me has put me in a position, first off, like it's really hard to have empathy for myself. It's like a strange concept. But if that's a a reason to journal, it's easier to journal. If I can understand why empathy is important for me to operate and live in identity, and empathy can be achieved through some certain practices like journaling, it makes sense. In the same way that someone who wants to grow their business and get past the bottleneck of them being the project manager and the superintendent and the sales guy and the estimator and all of that, like, okay, I want to achieve being able to step out of some of these roles and ultimately have a business that operates without me. So because that's what I want, I can put the systems in play. I can change the habits. I can put the infrastructure in to create that, but there's got to be a reason.
Right.
So
Right.
within personal development, within connection with other people, it's being able to anchor the activities that we have, the intentions that we have behind the conversations that we have with people, the way that we give generously of our time, energy, money, effort, like all of that. If it's not tied to an intention, to a purpose, it's just looking at Dan Martell with the Lamborghini and like, I want that.
Yes.
Missing
Right.
the fact that if you listen to Dan Martell, his whole purpose is about giving and contributing to other people and their lives. Like all these
Mm.
other things have come as a result,
Mhm.
but it's not the pursuit of those things in and of themselves.
Mm. So good. It's just so interesting, when we think about the whole purpose of this podcast, examining the craft and how to hone the craft, build the systems in place. Our calling, what is our calling? Having a really clear why, to your point. When we look back at the end of our life, we look back on the legacy of every single day lived, the amalgamation of that into what is the legacy. And we're writing our legacy every single day.
Mm,
And legacy is, yes, the money in the bank, that has direct tie to the craft, but then it's also so relational with ourselves and also everyone around us. You were talking about our families. So many of us, that's our why, and yet they're the ones that get sacrificed on the altar of the craft. And
right.
so it's so critically important what you're talking about, because if we're not hyper clear on what our why is to begin with, it's going to end up kind of getting faded into the background of the noise. And
Yeah.
because it's so much easier, um, I was talking with someone the other day, and we were identifying just how it's so hard when the benchmarks of success relationally are very, very blurry.
Mm,
Whereas the P&L, that's very easy to see. Oh, I'm being successful. So we have to intentionally create those KPIs, key performance indicators of relational success for our child that's learning to walk. So what does connection mean to them when they can't talk back to me, really? It's just like
yeah.
it's kind of the deaf and dumb relationship at this point, because it's just we can't get anything. So what does presence look like in that regard?
Mm,
And also with our partner. What about our mom and our dad and it's just all of a sudden now it expands outward. And so I'm just so grateful that you brought up the empathy piece, because man, once we remove judgment, you said earlier that you're so curious. And I've had a couple folks, who are in the nine-figure realm that I've had the opportunity to have on the Knowing podcast, and both of them, like, they talk about curiosity as a core tenet of being successful. So, we're talking about hope being a core tenet of being a good leader. But man, you can't actually get to the point of hope without first being curious about
mm,
what is the ceiling that you've been able to raise. What is your experience? There's a curiosity that then leads to empathy, that then leads to hope. It's like maybe curiosity actually is the very first step. But actually, to your point, and this is where I'm just riffing here for a moment, perhaps empathy is the first step to get to curiosity, because otherwise it's just going to be judgment. And so
mm.
perhaps empathy is the first piece that allows for curiosity, that gets us to hope so we can raise the ceiling.
Yeah. I man, I think there's a strong relationship between personal suffering and
Mm,
empathy.
mhm.
Um, as you're saying that, I had a few different things flip through my head that just the relationship between some of these things that so I'm a part of the youth group at our church. I work with specifically the sixth grade boys, which are amazing, but like really challenging just with where your head's at and maturity at that age. And we were talking about empathy just a few weeks ago, and it's a really hard concept to get through to someone who doesn't like get it or feel it. And there are some boys in that group that have just very well-to-do homes. Like parents are really successful, they go to great schools. They just like haven't really experienced much personal suffering or perceived it or been exposed to it around them in a way that it's affected them in any way. And there are a few boys in there that have had deep traumatic experiences. One boy lost both of his parents within the last 18 months. Like just
Wow.
tragic. Another boy, his
Oh,
little 4-year-old sister had cancer in her eye this year. Went through 6 months of chemo treatments. Had to have her eye removed. So their whole family
oh,
experienced all of this thing. So there's a degree there that it comes across. Like I can see it in the interactions. There's empathy that's there without them having to think about it or work for it. It's
right.
there through
Yes.
either a personal suffering or an exposure to that you choose to sit in suffering with someone else. Um, I think again, like all of this, I fail miserably at most of the time. Like I'll get these glimpses of success in these areas. One of the things that you mentioned, like presence, you can't be curious about something if you're not present in a
Mm.
moment to
Hmm.
recognize that. I was in a group of guys yesterday morning, and one of the guys is talking about he like really struggles to just sit and be quiet with
Mm.
anything. He's like his mind starts to go. And I'm like, well, let's look outside for a minute. Like, look at this tree. It was really windy out. Like, pick one branch on that tree and just like watch it move. And like as soon as you start to lose your focus on that and you start to think, well, look at one leaf on that tree, like watch it move. Like you start to tune in to what's happening outside of yourself. And this has been one of the greatest struggles of my life with depression, with addiction, with all the things that are self-serving, self-focused. Like the object of my
Wow.
pursuit terminates on me and my own satisfaction or my own internalization of the experience I'm having in the world. So depression, anxiety, all these things, there are chemical things going on. Like I do not discount the struggles of, like I said, I have bipolar disorder, of mental illness, and all of that. And but there's a great responsibility that we can and should take, a stewardship over our personal lot in life, whatever that is. I've got it way easier than so many people in the world that like I can't imagine the struggle that they have in so many areas.
You're
Um,
right.
but there's a degree of taking like take your thoughts captive. Like you can plug in all the
Yeah.
terminology around this, but without that presence and connection to like what's happening, there's this story happening in the world that we're a part of, that we're connected to. And if we're not tied to like the curiosity, I think is a great sign that we're tapping into that greater narrative that's taking place and not our own little personal internal world.
Yes. Oh, I love that. It's so interesting. We have to go inward and listen. And it's so important we don't stay there,
Mm,
because man, there's been a real shift for me because growing up, it was all about focusing on everyone else. And there's a book by David Brooks called The Second Mountain. And the concept of this is that the first mountain that most people summit is the mountain representing self. What career do you want? And we all grow up as little narcissists anyways. We cry and get what we want, and so you have to
yeah,
learn empathy as you get older. And technically, kind of once you've reached this point of either suffering or you've really cultivated yourself, and frankly you find that your own singular pursuit is not going to be that which brings the greatest amount of fulfillment, then that's when you kind of move to the second mountain, which is the mountain of community, and looking around you and seeing, man, there's so much more purpose out there. But
yeah,
because I was more so raised on the second mountain, I've actually had to go and learn some of the first mountain. I actually had to learn to go inward because I was so externally fixated. And so it's frankly, in the external fixation, there's again very clear KPIs. It's really hard to understand what does success look like for me to go and sit and be alone. And so I think it's the dynamicism of the inner and outer cultivation of realizing that our calling, we actually have to go inward to find that, but it's for the purpose of others. Like we go inward
Mm,
for the purpose of love and for the purpose of what we can give. And to your point, man, it's almost like this concept of the overflow from out of the heart the mouth speaks, and you shall see a good tree by its fruit that it bears. And
yeah,
so it's really the both and I'm so grateful that you've talked about both pieces, because you're right, if we were to just stay inward, man, where it's going to be nihilism or narcissism or something in between. And
yeah,
so to then kind of get to that second mountain, and whether you started on the second, you have to go to the first and then go back to the second, or wherever your journey has been, it's so beautiful when you kind of see how you're just a small piece in this grand and beautiful picture. Even with our business, why are we doing this? What is the purpose? And think of all of the families that we're serving, both internally with our team, but also the homes. Like my family's painting business, we physically go into people's homes. So
yeah,
what is the environment that we're bringing into this place? There's such an opportunity to bless people and love on people in so many different ways, and paint their house. But there's just a real stewardship, and I'm glad that you use that word. I'd like to, and I'm mindful of the time here, Adam. We 51 minutes just breezed by. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did we talk for all this time? It felt so quickly. I would love to talk about identity if you're open to it on a part two, because identity is something that, especially in the age of AI, in the age of phones and just constant stimuli, I think we really, really forget who we are. And
yeah,
so, if you're up for it, love to have you back on.
absolutely. Can I share one
Um,
one other thing?
Please do.
That I just felt like kind of compelled. I don't know. Maybe there's a person at a point in time that would hear this and take something from it. But my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's 16 now. But earlier this year, she attempted suicide. And
Oh my gosh.
up until that point, it was a rough year. The last year has been a rough year in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, I had no idea how rough it was for her. Um, there's a page in the book before the one I just showed you, the original, the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse, where the boy asks the horse at one point, "What's the bravest thing you've ever said?" And the horse says, "Help." And there's something
Chills.
to business owners, especially. So just imagine you've got someone running a painting company or a remodeling company or whatever, and you've got a team, big team, small team, whatever. But you're in this. There's nobody else. Even if you have a partner, there's something about your experience that you've got that you can't necessarily open up fully to your team. There's a part of leadership that you kind of have to take the burden and the internal burden. A lot of guys, and I used to do this, is would be go home and I'm kind of like putting all my business struggles and have a homeowner who's making a fuss about something and this guy didn't show up today and all of that. And I'm like, that's not the place in my home. Like they're a great therapist, like all of these things. So I think with someone, and especially the type of person who's going to an entrepreneur, someone who's going to run and operate a business and seek to grow it, there's this courage and boldness that allows you to be successful and grow, but it also keeps us from not even just asking for help when we need it, recognizing when we need help, and
Mm.
having someone or someone to ask for help, but also recognizing the people that matter most in our lives. You mentioned the KPI. This is something that hits really deep to me. Is business was going great up until and the point where my daughter attempted suicide. And when she comes in our room freaked out that she doesn't want to die after she downed a whole bunch of my psych meds, and I'm then taking my daughter, I had no idea the degree that things had progressed in this destructive way in her life. And I'm helping clients, I'm doing this work. The numbers are looking great. The bank account's growing, like things are happening. But I'd missed all kinds of key performance indicators in my home. So
Wow.
I'm in the hospital and then visiting in a psych ward for a week after, like I don't care about the business,
Yeah.
at all. And in those moments, I have a choice to, in my own personal world, is to operate from this vulnerability of this is what's happening in my reality right now. Ask my client, I sent an audio message to and sent it to all the clients and said, this is what's going on in my world right now. Can you pray for me? Like, I can't, it doesn't help me or anyone else to have it all together. Like when I don't
Mm,
have it all together,
right.
and a struggle, and this is the thing that I'm most passionate about and love about the work that we do, is we are a place. Like we use AI, we have systems, we have this stuff for how we impact and we work with people to grow their business and systems and development and culture and all of that. But ultimately at its core, when I'm getting a text from one of our guys, one of our clients, that it was 11:58 Christmas night, I see this text in the morning that I've never been this present with my family. Like the struggles that he's gone through in the last 6 months and this journey he's been on. And it's just, that's the power of creating a space where someone knows, like, if I go to that space, there's someone there that will listen,
Mm,
to have a space to even go to, whatever that looks like. And then
mm.
growth happens from that place of stability and
Yeah.
safety.
Yes. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That was how's she doing?
Phenomenal. She
Oh,
got, that was in
Adam.
February. Uh,
Wow.
she gave her life to Christ and got baptized in May. She's shared her testimony with
Oh
the
my
church and with
gosh.
people that she's had an impact. We've grown. The whole dynamic of our house has changed. If and you can look back and see things, and I go through this with clients all the time and with close friends, that if you go back and I love documenting. Mateo
Mm.
used to get on, like, not get on me, but he's not a documenter naturally. And I absolutely am. So our client journeys and everything like that, it's like there's documented a screenshot for everything that's said that was powerful. Like in all of that, and that story is the power there is to be able to look back. It's one thing to share our testimony. And I think people in the faith hold a lot of weight in sharing your testimony, but there's a power in understanding the faithfulness of God and the trust of timing and sequence that things happen in life, when you can look back at the things that led
Mm,
up to what's happening in our world right now, and my daughter's world, and the struggles that were necessary. And you
mm,
can think whatever you want about who or how or why bad things happen. Like I don't have all the answers and I don't know all the correct way to frame that. But you can
mm.
look back at life and recognize anything that's worthwhile that has come to be could not be. Can I share one more thing?
Please, please.
Okay. So we have a daughter who's 10 now, and probably 2 years ago, maybe, yeah, we'll say 2 years ago. It doesn't really matter. It was a couple years ago. She came in our bedroom and said something that like floored me. And shortly before my wife Katie was pregnant with my daughter, we had miscarried. And that was a really painful time for a lot of ways. I was had one of my crack stints around that time, where I was living very secretly hard, and thought that had something to do with this, like the way things progressed and some of the trauma in our life and all of this. It was a very, very hard and difficult and dark time then. So that had happened, the miscarriage happened, and then Katie became pregnant, and that was Shiloh, our 10-year-old. And so Shiloh comes in our room a couple years ago and says she knows about, the girls know about the miscarriage. We have a little teddy bear that someone gave us as a gift to like remember. And Shiloh had seen that teddy bear had triggered this thought, and she came in and said, "If that baby would have been born, would I not exist?" I'm like,
Wow.
I like I don't know. Like I don't know. But thinking back at the tragedy of that time, there's no way we could have known what was coming with this rainbow baby and the gift of all the children and the stories. And but when you look back and see in the broader picture and the longer timeline, like you see the
Yeah.
beauty and the way it works out. But in that moment, I was
Yes.
not anticipating this future testimony of like, well, this is going to be great someday, because great things come out of suffering and trials. But important to remember that and to know that.
Wow, and hope. Hope is on the other side of that
Yes.
and can get us through. Adam, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so excited for part 2. This was so, so encouraging, and, I'm grateful for you. Thank you for sharing your story, y'all. Even those listening now, I'm just I'm reminded and heartened, our story needs to be shared. It really, really does. There's so much for other people to gain. Talk about hope, right? We actually have the opportunity to give hope to others by sharing our story, and hope is the best of things. So,
Mm,
thank you. I'm so
thank
grateful
you
for you,
so
my
much.
friend. I'm excited for part 2.